Hi everyone, Sajid Amit here, and welcome to another review. So this review is going to be interesting for me. Most reviews are. So this review is going to pit the Sony IER M7, which I have here with me. It's a loaner unit from a friend, against the Sony IER M7, which, the M9 is an upgrade to the M7. And in my review, I'll just do an A/B of the two, a comparison, and give you my thoughts. And before I get into the full review, I just want to sort of disclaimer that I haven't been doing reviews recently for a few days because I've been suffering from a lot of back pain. But it is what it is. I'm getting better. So I was having difficulty sitting down, but feeling better now. So I thought, why not jump back into, or at least do a very brief review of these two very well-regarded IEMs from Sony. So first of all, let's get into the background of these IEMs. So I think it was in 2018 that Sony released the IER series, which comprised of the IER Z1R or Z1R, which is Sony's flagship and a very, very respected IEM, the IER M9 and the IER M7. So the way Sony marketed these IEMs was that the M9 and M7 were sort of treated as musicians' gear and for stage use, whereas the Z1R was, and it still remains, Sony's flagship IEM. I have to say though that the M9 is usually more recommended and more easily than the M7, which tends to sort of fly under the radar just a little bit. To start with aesthetics, build, and comfort, they're both very, very nicely built. There are differences, of course. The M9 goes for a very minimal look. It's very sturdily built. It feels premium. It's magnesium alloy housing and carbon fiber faceplate, which does result in a very lightweight and very easy to use sort of build. And as Sony tends to give you, the unboxing experience is phenomenal. I don't have the box in front of me right now, but just imagine 13 pairs of expensive high-end tips, an awesome hard case, and other goodies. The cables, I really love the Sony cables. They're so ergonomic. I just wish all cables were like this. They're very easy to coil, roll over, they disentangle very easily. Like, you literally take them out of the box and they're ready to go. Yeah, so overall, in terms of aesthetics, build, and comfort, very, very easy to use, and they're very light and they fit nicely in your ear. I love how they feel and how premium they look and how easy they are to use. Tonality wise, there's a widespread opinion that the M9 is just an overall superior version of the M7, and this is where this review is going to very strongly disagree. I don't think this is an upgrade in terms of technical performance, without a doubt, as you'd expect, because this is significantly more expensive, twice the price compared to the M7. But of course, I do think there are tonal differences that one needs to pay attention to and figure out what tonality will work for you. So if in terms of bass, this has a higher level of bass energy. This is a more warm IEM. It's more clockwise tilt IEM. So the bass goes deep. There's sub bass, rumble. As does this. This also has bass and sub bass rumble. But I do think that both these IEMs are similar in the fact that the physicality you get is more from sub bass than, let's say, from the dynamic slam or punch. So they don't hit as hard as a dynamic driver IEM does. However, I think what's worth keeping in mind is that they don't sound as BA or as balanced armature-ish, so to speak, as a lot of BAs. And this is something Sony does really well with their BAs. So it doesn't have that dreaded BA timbre in the bass, at least not in a very perceptible way. And in terms of other comparisons in bass, I do think the M9 is slightly faster. It's snappier, which doesn't mean that the M7 is sloppier or slower. I just think this is a bit faster. Mid-range, a lot of my friends prefer the M9's mid-range. They love it, and I have friends who think this is the best mid-range they've ever heard. And they think it's organic, and all that's true. So the vocals sound very nice and smooth. But I do think that in certain frequencies that it doesn't come up as much as it ought to, especially in the presence region, relative to the bass. Whereas with the M7 it does. And say if you're comparing with a different IEM like the Andro, for instance, right? What the Andro does well is that the mid-range to treble balance is such that you do get a lot more clarity with the Andro, and you don't get that sort of clarity with the M9 or the M7. But then again, I'm a bit of a clarity freak. To give you context, my favorite IEM has been the Final Audio A8000, which a lot of people find bright. So there are people who love the A8000's clarity but can't take it because it's bright. I, on the other hand, love this clarity so much that, you know, I can take the fact that the 8000 is a bit bright. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm a sucker for clarity. I look for clarity. And so for me, and because I've A-B'd with other IEMs that are, I think, slightly more clear in their tuning, especially in the upper mid-range and treble, I find both these IEMs slightly less clear in that sort of frequency band, which is not to say that they're muddy. However, with certain tracks, I do think that they can become slightly congested, both these IEMs. Overall, if I have to summarize my impression of the tonality and the frequency response of these two IEMs, I would say that the M9 is warmer. The M7 is more linear, which I love. And as far as I'm concerned, technical performance aside, purely in terms of tonality, I prefer the M7. Surprise, surprise. I prefer it because of the fact that it's more linear. I also prefer it because in terms of air frequencies, the frequencies above 10K, the M7 has relatively more energy, and overall the balance is such that the M9 is slightly tilted in favor of the warmer or lower end frequencies, and the M7 is more linear. Now, to get into technical performance, as usual, we will start with detail retrieval. The M9 is pretty much the top of the class, best in class in its price range. It is very detailed, more detailed, way more detailed than the Andromeda 2020, which is similar in price. And you're not going to miss any nuance in the recording. The M7 is slightly less detailed, but not very far off, honestly. Speed and dynamics wise, speed is great. Dynamics, the dynamics of these balanced armature IEMs are what they are. They're not going to blow you away, but they're fine. You're not going to miss much unless you are looking for a certain level of slam and punch from an EDM track that you like, or, you know, certain rock tracks, etc. Staging and imaging is where these actually hit home runs, both of them. But of course, this stage is better, and this image is better. The M9, I mean, the M9 imaging is fabulous. Like I've said this, I've covered this in my Andromeda review, that you get sounds from different directions. But even with the M7, I was listening to this last night off my Con Alpha DAP, a great DAP, and it was just amazing how on, you know, a lot of tracks, as the song unfolds, you sort of are able to place each instrument in turn as each instrument starts being played, and you sort of get a sense of the relative distances so well. The layering is just amazing. It's immaculate. And both the M7 and the M9 do this. The M9 does this far better, of course, and it should, because it's way more expensive. And finally, timbre-wise, nothing to write home about, but of course, like I said, the timbre is fine. There's nothing offensive in the timbre. There's no dreaded BA timbre with either of these IEMs. In terms of amp pairings, I don't think either of these amps are particularly amp picky, and will sound good off you know, a lot of different sources. So they're not going to scale as much as a lot of other headphones or IEMs can, but, you know, which is a good thing in a certain sense, because then you don't have to worry so much about what you're going to drive these with. So last but not least, I like to sort of end my reviews with some talk about the gear synergy. The genre matching is what I was trying to get at. In terms of genre matching, which is basically my sense of what genres work better with each, because this is a flatter frequency response, slightly less bass and more air, I do think this goes well with tracks that have woodwind instruments. So, you know, classical, this works well with piano, this works well with vocal bass tracks. This works well with everything, I think, the M9, as does the M7, but I do think the M9 is also something you might prefer for rock and EDM and those sorts of things. But honestly, like, although the M9 is slightly warmer than the M7, and the M7 is slightly more reference, in my opinion, they're both great IEMs. But I do want to sort of conclude by making the point that the M9 is legendary. It's very famous, and a lot of very respected audio critics, audio reviewers will rate this higher than the Andromeda 2020, and with very good reason. The M7, though, is the hidden gem, in my opinion. It is such a very impressive performer for its tonality, for its technical performance, for its comfort, for all the accessories you get. and of course the Sony quality assurance. And overall, I honestly think that if I just for price, I would recommend the M7. But which is the better IEM? Of course, the M9 is the better IEM, in my opinion. But that's all from my sort of very brief discussion of these two IEMs. I do hope to write a longer written review at some point on HeadFi, so stay tuned for that. And thank you for watching this review. And stay tuned, stay subscribed, and hit me up if you have any questions or comments. Feel free to leave me a message or drop me an email. Thank you for watching and stay safe. Bye.